All right, let's talk about some world news today. So the EU Commission unveils plan to channel 10 trillion euros of citizen savings into strategic investments. Okay, this story was brought to me by a comment on the channel. Thanks to Knife Collector here. If you see this, you can speak to it. The EU Commission plans to channel 10 trillion citizen savings. Thought banks were required to keep a certain amount on hand, and all the money already loaned out for homes, cars. So what money are they planning to spend for? And if profits are made, who gets the profit? So many questions. So thanks for submitting the question. I will answer every comment that you guys have, and I will try to make a video out of any suggestions that you have. Thanks a lot so much. So let's talk about some world news today. So I did some research, and I found out this one video here who's explaining the use of the 10 trillion euros of citizen savings for military plans, right? That's interesting because the actual article, which I will leave in the description below from euronews.com, does not say anything about military, but it seems like they're going to use it for strategic investments. Okay, what are strategic investments? This one person seems to think that it is military use. Let's have a look.
Frankly, I could not believe what I read. The European Union is actively exploring ways to use 10 trillion euros of citizens' savings. That's right, of citizen savings, private savings and private investments, to be clear, for the EU defense/offense purposes. The European Union leadership has plans to use private capital. If you're in the European Union, this would be your savings. So they're going to use private capital for their military ambitions. So there are several proposals on how the EU plan might actually work. One notable initiative came from Italy. As you can see here, the idea is very much sugar-coated to read mobilizing private savings. It involves Italy's proposal to leverage private capital for defense funding. Italy's finance minister actually has outlined a plan to mobilize up to 200 billion euros in private investments for defense. He proposed for this amount to be backed by nearly 17 billion euro public guarantee. The only person who should be thinking about mobilizing private savings is the direct and legal owner of those savings. You would agree with that. However, anything appears to be possible these days in the European Union. Of course, after seizing and using the interest earned on Russian sovereign assets that are held in European central banks, anything is possible, and there is a legal explanation.
So just right there, if the U.S. decided to use our own, savings and investments into military use or into their own strategic, we'd have a fit, I think. We would go crazy on this. So it's amazing that I was having a hard time finding any kind of news, well, not any kind, but any kind of commentary outside of the standard news channels on this European one. So thanks for sending that suggestion, Knife Collector.
Legal loopholes that could be tailored to fit any sort of ambition, and this is just one of them. Imagine if these headlines came from Russia or from China or from any other unaligned state. They would be all over Western media. We wouldn't hear the end of them. But since this is the EU that is trying to use private savings and private investments for military needs, there's complete silence.
That's kind of what I was thinking. If it was China or Russia or some communist country over there, we're like, oh yeah, that's typical for those guys over there. They're going to take their citizens' money, no problem. But for a big Western countries, or even the EU and stuff, we wouldn't. I don't think Americans would allow that. I mean, we would vote it down, I would think, but, I don't know. I've seen a lot of weird stuff lately, but, for Europeans to be having to do this, I don't know if it's already done or if it's planned to or if it's just a bill or whatever they call it. We'll have to see.
It appears Italy's initiative has already received wide support from the EU finance ministers, so likely it will be implemented with some adjustments, I would expect. Reports indicate that finance ministers from Poland and France are on board. Italy's proposal actually complements the massive 8 billion euro defense fund announced by Ursula von der Leyen in early March. So not only will they put you in more debt, in more national debt, but they will also, quote unquote, mobilize your own savings for their military goals. I do hope that those of you who are in Europe are actually paying attention to just how unusual these ideas are becoming.
Yeah, if you're in Europe or anything, if you by chance see this, leave a comment below. Do you even know about this, or what are your thoughts? Are you against this? Are you for this? I mean, it seems like such a radical idea to me.
So why is this needed? Why are they coming up with the idea to use private capital for their military needs? Well, the EU is, of course, attempting to use any avenues that are available to fund its rearmament strategy without having to substantially increase taxes on businesses and on individuals, as well as without increasing debt levels too much. It is clear that increasing taxes would be very, very unpopular politically.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go there.
Nope.
But of course, so is trying to mobilize your private savings.
Yeah.
The European Union policies have proven to be quite disastrous. Either way, they're very self-harming and short-sighted, arguably. European economies are struggling, and so they're looking for ways to get the funding that they need for their plans. Germany's economy has been contracting for years now, since 2019, as the country's manufacturing moved overseas and high energy costs bankrupted whoever decided to stay. Last week, Volkswagen announced plans to shift from manufacturing civilian vehicles to military equipment.
That's
There's an
amazing.
entire video on my channel with more details.
I'll have to look at that.
Then the UK experienced economic stagnation in the second half of 2024. The forecast for the UK economy has just been downgraded once again to just 1% growth from 1.5% growth, I believe. France is not an exception here either. The country is confronting several significant economic challenges, including high public debt, fiscal deficits, and political instability. So they're not in a position to increase debt. However, they do have quite ambitious military goals. The European Commission said it would actually lift EU financial rules to allow countries to invest in defense. And now the EU appears to have found an alternative route to finance its policies, and that is through your private capital.
Wow.
There are reports of EU finance ministers being in favor of using private savings and private investments for European military ambitions. In addition to Italy's proposal, the EU is also considering much broader measures to fund defense spending. Ursula von der Leyen, European Commission President, has already introduced a plan to provide 150 billion euros in loans to member states for defense investments. So these loans are going to go towards funding infrastructure development. These loans are intended to finance the procurement of military equipment such as artillery, missiles, ammunition, drones, and anti-drone systems. Additionally, EU finance ministers plan to utilize joint borrowing. So they are going to increase debt. They're going to use existing European funds and the European Investment Bank's involvement to finance defense projects. Their goal is to increase defense spending without significantly impacting national budgets, or to be more specific, without increasing their already skyrocketing deficits. Whether or not it is possible remains to be seen, but the released details are extremely concerning. Now, the EU's plans to use private and public financial resources for its military needs may be a sign of a degree of desperation, combined with the launch of the digital euro, a CBDC. This is a very concerning development. And if you are in the EU, you might want to look into the details on a local level to find out what is actually going on locally and whether there's anything that you might want to be aware of.
Well, that's very interesting. So basically, they're taking the savings and private investments of the citizens and going to funnel that into strategic investments. Okay, this lady's thinking military weapons, that kind of thing. So if America did that, we'd freak out pretty much. If you're in Europe, leave me a comment on what you think. If you're in U.S., let me leave a comment and tell me what you think. If America did something like this, would you be, I mean, even if even if Donald Trump was like, yeah, let's do this, would you be for it or against it, even if you're a big fan or even if you're against, or even if you're not a big fan of Donald Trump? Let me know. But leave a comment below. I do read every comment and I reply to every comment. If you leave me a video suggestion, I will do my best to put that video up as I have in this case. Thanks, Knife Collector, for the suggestion. Everybody like, subscribe, share this with someone who likes world news. Definitely watch this next video, and I'll see you there.